I was still chewing when she said it. There was a small piece of kale stuck between my teeth, and I was mid-sentence, talking to Brent about the parking meters on Elm Street, of all the stupid things. When Myra lifted her champagne glass, turned to the man beside her, and slipped her fingers through his like it was nothing. Her laugh was timed, effortless, practiced. I didn't stop chewing right away. I didn't even react because that's what your brain does when it's been trained to trust someone. It fills in the blanks. It assumes good intentions. Protects you from horror even as it's happening. He looked at me first, not her. He looked at me like a warning. I wish I could describe his expression. It wasn't gloating. It was worse. It was the look of a man who's already taken what he came for and now feels sorry for you. But not enough to stop. Myra turned back toward the table, glass still raised, and said to the entire room, "To freedom and fun and honesty." Her thumb rubbed across the back of his hand. Nobody clapped. Nobody laughed. The moment stalled in the air like the sound of a dropped fork. I think someone cleared their throat. I could hear the dishwasher humming in the kitchen like background music for a funeral. Myra looked straight at me, her lips curved like she was savoring something. "Relax, sweetheart," she said. "It's just one night." I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have words, but because I had too many, and none of them could leave my mouth without unraveling something inside me. My hands were shaking, but only slightly, like when you've held in too much caffeine or too many secrets. I looked down at my plate. Chicken marsala. The steam had stopped rising. Everyone was still. Nobody moved. Not Nolan, not Jocelyn, not even Harper, who always had something to say. It was like I'd fallen out of the script and nobody knew what came next. What do you do when your wife of nearly a decade, the person you thought still liked you at the very least, grabs another man's hand in front of all your friends and calls it just one night? What's the correct etiquette? Smile politely. Excuse yourself to cry in the guest bathroom. Pretend it's a joke. Because I did none of those things. I just sat there like a coward. I didn't ask who he was. I didn't ask how long it had been going on. I didn't ask what exactly she meant by one night. I just blinked and blinked again and wished the table would collapse on top of me so I wouldn't have to keep pretending this was normal. The room eventually moved again. I think Nolan poured more wine. I think someone started a new topic about travel or houseplants or something stupid and distant. But Myra never let go of his hand. Not once. She just sat there beside me like I wasn't real. And the worst part, she called me sweetheart. Not true. Not Truman. Not even babe, which she uses when she's annoyed. No, she chose sweetheart. The name she used to whisper in my ear when we danced barefoot in the kitchen. The one she said the night I proposed. The one I hadn't heard in almost a year. She used that word while holding his hand. And now, 3 hours later, I'm standing in a stranger's bathroom with a red Solo cup full of tap water, staring at my reflection like it might blink first. I haven't left the party. I haven't gone home. I haven't done anything at all. I just keep hearing that voice in my head. The one that sounds like hers, but colder. Relax, sweetheart. It's just one night only. I think it broke something in me that'll never grow back. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I stand up? Why didn't I say something? Why didn't I throw my drink in her face or challenge the guy to a fight or storm out and slam the door so hard it knocked sense into everyone? Because I don't do scenes. I don't scream. I don't flip tables. I don't threaten or sob in public or give people the satisfaction of knowing they've cracked me open. I shut down quietly. So, I sat there while my wife held another man's hand and toasted to freedom with the same mouth that used to kiss me on the nose when she thought I was cute. I chewed my cold chicken. I watched her from the corner of my eye as if I were a guest at my own execution. The guy, the one she was with, didn't say much. He didn't need to. He leaned back like he owned the chair, the room, and her. He wore a silver ring on his right thumb and kept swirling his drink like he was bored. Occasionally, he glanced at me. Not in a cruel way, just with pity. That was the worst part. The pity. Somewhere around the middle of dessert, Myra stood up. She didn't excuse herself. She didn't say goodbye. She just looked down at me and said, "Don't wait up, sweetheart," and left through the back patio doors with him into the night. Like it was a scene from some indie romance she always made me sit through. I didn't follow. No one did. No one asked if I was okay. No one broke the silence. And I realized something in that moment. Something awful. They all knew. Everyone at that table had known this was coming. Maybe not tonight. Maybe not this publicly. But the affair, the distance, the change in her. Yeah, they'd seen it, felt it. Some of them probably even helped cover for her. Girls' nights, yoga retreats, late meetings. I bet they were all accomplices, whether they meant to be or not. But no one warned me. No one said a word. I excused myself an hour later, pretending I had an early morning. I didn't. I just couldn't sit there anymore, pretending I wasn't bleeding internally, while everyone smiled politely and passed around compliments for the cheesecake. I got in my car. I drove. I didn't go home. Home didn't feel like a place I could return to just yet. Not with her perfume still lingering in the hallways or her shoes lined up by the door like nothing had happened. So, I drove aimlessly for a while through dark streets and empty intersections. I stopped at a gas station to buy breath mints I didn't need, just to have something to hold in my hand. I sat in the parking lot and stared at the dashboard until condensation fogged up the windshield. I didn't cry. I wish I had. I think it would have helped. Eventually, I ended up at my friend Ali's house, or rather, Ali's basement. He was already asleep, but his wife let me in and said nothing. Just handed me a blanket and pointed toward the couch like this wasn't the first time she'd seen a man show up hollow-eyed and destroyed. The worst part of that night wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't the hand-holding. It wasn't even the line. It's just one night. No, the worst part was how casual it all was. Like it had been rehearsed. Like I was the last person in the room to get the script. She didn't scream. She didn't break up with me. She didn't confess. She just walked away like I was a polite inconvenience she'd outgrown. And now I'm here, lying on a borrowed couch, staring at the ceiling, wondering what kind of man watches his marriage implode and says nothing. Who just lets it happen like a bad weather report. Maybe I'm weak. Maybe I always was. But if this was just one night for her, then why does it feel like the end of my entire life? I didn't sleep, but I did close my eyes. There's a difference. Real sleep heals you. Fake sleep just suspends the pain for a few hours, like someone hitting pause on a horror movie. When I woke up, if you can call it that, I was still in Ali's basement, fully clothed, still wearing my socks with my belt digging into my ribs. The blanket had slipped off in the night. The TV was frozen on a weather forecast I didn't remember turning on. For a moment, I thought maybe it had all been a dream. That awful dinner, the hand-holding, that smirk, her voice like silk over a blade. Relax, sweetheart. It's just one night. But then I saw my phone lighting up. One message from her. Myra. Hey, can we talk when you're ready? That's it. No apology, no explanation. Just a vague, distant ping from the other side of the wreckage. I didn't respond. Couldn't. My fingers hovered over the screen like they were scared to touch it. I locked the phone and set it face down on the coffee table. It vibrated once more. A call this time, but I let it ring out. I couldn't bear to hear her voice. Not yet. Not until I understood what any of this meant. Ali came down about an hour later. He looked half awake, scratching his head and mumbling something about not expecting company. He offered me coffee. I nodded. We didn't talk about it right away. He sat beside me in his robe, sipped his mug, and stared at the muted news like we were just two guys watching stocks crash. Eventually, he said, I heard about last night. Heard, not saw, not witnessed. Heard, which meant the whispers had already started. Was it planned? I asked him. My voice cracked. He didn't answer. That silence told me everything I needed to know. People had known. Maybe not details, but enough. Enough to look away. Enough to fake smiles at dinner parties and tell me I was lucky to have her. I started laughing. Not a real laugh. One of those broken, dry things that happen when the inside of your chest starts to collapse in on itself. Ali looked uncomfortable, like he wanted to say something but didn't have the words. I don't blame him. What do you say to the guy whose wife openly humiliated him in front of a dozen people without blinking? She left with him, I finally said. Ali nodded slowly. I don't know why that hit harder than it should have. Maybe because I was hoping he'd say, "No, she came back," or "She changed her mind," or "She just wanted to make you jealous." But he didn't, because none of those things were true. She left and she didn't come back. I spent most of that day wandering, aimless again, like a ghost with errands. I walked the block around Ali's neighborhood 4 times. I went to a bookstore and stared at a shelf of self-help titles, trying not to fall apart in the relationship section. I ended up buying a notebook I didn't need just so I wouldn't leave empty-handed. I didn't go home. Not yet. Instead, I drove to our favorite diner, the one with the bad coffee and the neon sign that always buzzed. We used to go there at 2 a.m. when we couldn't sleep, order pancakes, and sit on the same side of the booth like teenagers. The waitress recognized me, asked, "Where's your better half?" before realizing. She recovered quickly, but it was too late. The booth was empty, so I sat in it alone. I drank 3 cups of coffee and stared out the window as cars passed, each one taking someone somewhere that wasn't this place. A man came in with flowers. He was meeting someone. He looked nervous, hopeful, and I sat there thinking about the man from the party. The one whose name I still didn't know. The one who held my wife's hand and didn't flinch while she broke me in half with a sentence. What kind of person walks into someone else's marriage like that? What kind of woman lets him? I don't have those answers yet. Maybe I never will, but I do know this. When I finally walked into our house that evening, everything was in its place. Shoes, candles, pillows, her jacket on the back of the dining chair. The scent of her shampoo still clinging to the air like a memory trying to survive. Only one thing was different. There was a note on the counter. It wasn't long, just 2 words. "Don't panic." What the hell did that mean? I must have read that note 20 times. Don't panic. 2 words, no signature, no explanation, not even a smiley face, which honestly would have somehow made it worse. It was just her handwriting, neat and clean, sitting there like a landmine on our granite countertop. At first, I thought it was sarcastic, like some cruel joke, like, "Don't panic that I just walked out with another man and shattered your dignity in front of our entire social circle." But the more I stared at it, the more it messed with my head. It didn't sound like sarcasm. It sounded like instructions, which made it worse because it meant she knew I'd be panicking. She counted on it. I walked through the house slowly, like it wasn't mine anymore. The furniture was the same, but everything felt staged, like a showroom of someone else's life. Myra's mug was still on the sink, half full of tea. She never finished. Her phone charger was plugged into the wall. The closet door was open a crack. I pushed it wider. Her green dress, the one she wore to the party, was draped over a chair, carefully folded. That didn't make sense. If she was coming back, why not hang it up? If she wasn't, why fold it at all? I sat on the bed and felt something crunch beneath me. I reached under and pulled out an envelope. It had my name on it. Just my name, Truman. Inside were 4 photos. Real printed ones like from a drugstore kiosk. Not digital, not texted, just old-fashioned evidence. The first was a picture of me asleep on the couch, mouth half open, wearing the hoodie I thought she hated. The second, a selfie of Myra kissing my cheek, me unaware, probably making coffee. The third, me fixing the broken kitchen light. She must have taken it from the hallway, sneaky and soft. But the 4th photo wasn't of me at all. It was him, the man from the party, the man who held her hand. He was sitting alone at a park bench staring at a pigeon. Myra must have taken it from a distance. The angle was strange, almost cinematic. There was something scribbled on the back in pen. "It started here." My stomach twisted. Started what? I stared at the photo like it might speak. The date on the back said December. That was 4 months ago. For months of late work, friend drama, and I'm just tired. I wanted to scream, but instead, I just sat there, photos in my lap, note on the counter, trying to remember when I stopped being a husband and started being a placeholder. And then the door opened. Not the front one, the side door, the one by the laundry room, the one she always said felt more like home. I froze. Footsteps. 1 pair, soft, measured, and then her voice, calm, low. "I didn't think you'd be home yet." I didn't say anything when she stepped into the room. Couldn't. She was holding a plastic bag from the pharmacy and acting like everything was normal. Like I hadn't watched her leave with another man 2 nights ago. Like she hadn't shattered whatever us used to mean with one casual sentence. She glanced at me, then at the bed, then at the envelope still in my hand. I saw her eyes pause on the fourth photo, the one with him. For a split second, her expression cracked just slightly. Then she composed herself. "I figured you'd find those." That's what she said. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I'll explain." Just like it was part of the plan. I finally found my voice. "Who is he?" She took a deep breath and sat at the edge of the bed. Not too close. She set the bag on the floor. It rattled. Something inside sounded like a glass bottle. "His name's Felix," she said softly. "He wasn't supposed to matter." I flinched. Wasn't supposed to matter. I didn't ask what he was supposed to be. I asked who he is. She looked at me then. Really looked, not with guilt, but with something closer to weariness. "He's someone I met during a workshop back in December. It was casual. Then it got complicated, and I didn't know how to end it." "So, you brought him to Nolan's party?" Her silence was the answer. I stood up. My chest felt like it was caving in, like my ribs were trying to hold something in that desperately wanted to scream. "Why?" I asked. My voice wasn't angry, just broken. She blinked slowly. Her response came so quiet, I almost didn't hear it. "Because I thought if I shocked you hard enough, you'd finally see it." "See what?" She looked down at her hands, then back up and said the one thing I never expected. "That I'm already gone." I don't remember what happened after that. Just flashes. Her walking past me, the door clicking shut behind her. The echo of that last sentence ricocheting in my skull like a warning bell. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She didn't even say goodbye. She just left me sitting in the house we built, holding a photo of a stranger and realizing I was married to someone who planned her exit like a magic trick. I didn't move for nearly an hour, just sat there on the edge of the bed, surrounded by her scent, by the stillness she left behind, by the echo of a woman who spoke as if she'd already been living without me long before she said it out loud. "I'm already gone." She was right. Myra hadn't been with me in months, maybe longer. I just didn't see it because I didn't want to. Or maybe I saw everything and pretended I didn't, like someone covering their eyes during a horror movie and convincing themselves that made them safe. Eventually, I stood up and walked the house like it was a museum. Her coat was still in the hallway. Her keys still on the hook, drawers full of her things. Nothing looked missing, but something was definitely gone. I checked her nightstand, not because I had a reason, more like a compulsion. That's when I noticed it. A small black notebook. I'd never seen it before. I picked it up. Inside weren't diary entries. Not exactly. They were observations of me. There were dates, times, comments like, "Truman didn't notice my haircut again. He apologized for being tired again." I didn't respond. Sat across from him at breakfast and wondered what it would feel like to be invisible. Maybe I already am. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. There were dozens of these entries, all calm, clinical. She had cataloged my indifference, my exhaustion, my absence. But here's the thing. I never meant to disappear. I was trying. I thought I was showing up, providing, supporting her passions, giving her space. I thought all of that meant love. But somewhere along the way, she started documenting the things I wasn't doing. And instead of talking to me, she started writing them down for herself, like she was building a case before even telling me she was unhappy. At the back of the notebook was a folded piece of paper. A flight confirmation, her name, one seat, departure, Saturday, destination, Portland, return, none. I sat on the floor for a long time after that. I didn't cry, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't have the energy left to. Instead, I opened my phone and finally did the thing I'd been avoiding. I searched Felix Gray. Nothing. Then I tried Felix Gray, workshop instructor, December creative retreat, California, and suddenly there he was, smiling in a black turtleneck, listed as a transformational speaker and intimacy coach. His website was all minimalist and vague quotes about personal truth and emotional alignment. His face was on every page, confident, serene, untouchable. I clicked on his calendar. That's when my stomach dropped. The retreat where they met, it wasn't in December. It was in October, 2 months earlier than she claimed, and it wasn't a workshop, it was a week-long overnight retreat for couples. So, unless Myra went with a friend or unless she had an imaginary husband, she went there with him. She lied to my face. Not once, not just at the party, but repeatedly, methodically. And the worst part, she left breadcrumbs on purpose. It started here. She wanted me to see it. She wanted me to feel it. Like the pain was part of the message. I closed my laptop. My hands were numb. I didn't know what was more devastating. The fact that she fell in love with someone else or the slow, artistic cruelty she used to unwrap it in front of me like a performance. Because now I couldn't even say it was betrayal. Felt more like design. I couldn't sleep again that night. I didn't even try. I sat on the floor of our living room with the black notebook beside me. The photos fanned out across the coffee table like evidence in a case I wasn't allowed to prosecute. I kept staring at that man's face, Felix, the supposed coach. His image burned into my brain like something I couldn't unsee. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. All I could think about was the retreat. 7 days. A remote property in the woods. Candlelit sessions, emotional intimacy building. That's what his website called it. I imagined her there, not in a rage or in secret, but in full daylight, laughing by a fire pit, holding his hand, sharing truths about me like I was just some outdated chapter in her life she'd outgrown. And then it hit me. She never intended to tell me anything. Not unless I made her. This was never going to be a confession. It was going to be a clean-cut, discreet, rehearsed like a magician hiding the final move behind misdirection. But I had ruined the illusion by showing up in the wrong place at the right time. Or maybe the right place at the worst time. She could have left quietly. She could have made up a story, packed a suitcase while I was at work, said she needed space or gone to find herself. But no, she wanted me to see it. Not just the affair, the distance, the replacement. She wanted me to feel her absence before she even left because people like Felix, they don't just take someone from you. They make sure you feel like you never really had them in the first place. Around 4 a.m., I got up. I wasn't thinking clearly. I just knew I needed answers. I drove. The roads were empty. The kind of silent where your tires sound louder than your thoughts. I drove across town toward the industrial side where Myra used to take pottery classes. I wasn't sure why I was going there. Maybe out of desperation. Maybe I hoped she'd be hiding there like an unfinished sculpture, waiting for someone to pick her up and make her whole again. But what I found was her car, not at the studio, but at a 24-hour cafe a few blocks away, parked under a flickering street lamp, facing out like she was waiting for the night to be over. The engine was off, the windows dark. I pulled into a spot across the street and just sat, watched. She was alone. For 15 minutes, I didn't move, just sat there and stared at the silhouette I used to know better than my own reflection. And then, to my absolute disbelief, she stepped out of the car and walked directly across the street toward me. I didn't even have time to react. She knocked on my window once, calm, controlled. I rolled it down. I figured you'd come looking. Her voice didn't shake. Mine did. You've been watching me? I asked, but I already knew the answer. She nodded. I wasn't ready for goodbye. Not until I knew what kind of ending we had. What kind of ending is this? She hesitated, then pulled something from her coat pocket and set it gently on my dashboard. A key. I'm not going back to the house, she said. I left everything that's yours. You won't hear from me again. That's it. She looked at me like she wanted to say more, but didn't. Instead, she turned and started walking back to her car. I didn't stop her. I didn't call out. I just stared at the key. Cold, metal, final. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, maybe even years, I felt something shift. Not anger, not closure, just silence. The kind you only hear after someone's already gone. When her car pulled out of that lot for the last time, something strange happened inside me. I expected to collapse, to scream, to chase her, to cry like a child left behind. But I didn't. I just sat there watching her taillights shrink into the distance. And I realized I wasn't broken. Not anymore. Not fully. There was pain, sure, and silence. And a deep, hollow ache that would probably live in my ribs for a while. But under that, something new had quietly taken root. Relief. Not because she was gone, but because I had stopped pretending. Pretending I was okay. Pretending we were okay. Pretending I hadn't seen the red flags months ago and just chose to fold them neatly and call them love. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells. I wasn't second-guessing every word I said. I wasn't shrinking myself to fit the space she allowed. I was alone, but I wasn't invisible. I drove home as the sky began to turn pale, that early morning blue that makes everything feel possible again. The streets were empty. I cracked the window open just enough to feel cold air against my skin. And for a second, I remembered how it used to feel to breathe. When I walked into the house, it didn't feel haunted anymore. The photos were still there, the furniture, her scent. But something had shifted, like the house had exhaled, like it had been waiting for me to reclaim it. I made coffee just for me, no second mug. And then I did something unexpected. I sat at the kitchen table, opened that black notebook of hers, the one filled with cold little entries about everything I didn't do, and I started writing my own. Not about her, about me. What I wanted, what I missed, what I ignored. Not to blame her, not to relive it, just to remember who I was before I got lost trying to hold on to someone who had already let go. Days passed. I started going for walks, reading again, reaching out to people I'd isolated myself from. Not to tell the story, not yet, but just to hear voices that didn't echo like hers. Then, about a week later, I found something else. A card tucked in the back of my bookshelf. Something she must have written years ago and forgotten about. It said, "You make the quiet parts of life feel safe." I stared at it for a long time and then I smiled because maybe I did and maybe I still could. Not for her, but for me.